Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be going over Maesuma Top 13, which is a super major happening this weekend in Japan. And this tournament is insane. You have pretty much all of Japan's top talent stepping up to perform here, as well as the return of Proto Bonham, which I'm incredibly excited about. But for our top 16 seeds, you have Takara, Kananabe, Passeriman, and Snow in 13th, Ken, Jogabu, Now, and Neo in 9th. For 7th place seeds, you have both Hiro and Kameme. 5th place, you have Osimo and Proto Bonham. 4th place, Gak. 3rd place, T. 2nd place, Yoshidora. And then the projected to take the entire thing is Mia. And there's a couple people in this tournament that, depending on how they do, they could steal the title of best of their respective character in Japan. I'm looking at Snow and Now. Now's results have been really strong, but as of late, they haven't been super incredible, while Snow has been doing very well at a couple regionals, so this could be a big one. If Now does overperform Snow, though, he will definitely be the best Mario in Japan. Then Kurama is still that number 1 Mario, but if Snow overperforms Now heavily at this tournament, makes top 8, and Now doesn't, there's a serious contention that Snow is the best Mario in Japan. You also have Passeriman and Kananabe. They've been fighting tooth and nail for that best title. It feels like one of them will perform in an event and one of them will underperform, and they trade back and forth, so really interested to see who takes it there. But my favorite one has got to be between Jogabu and Karage, and even though Jogabu is seated a little bit higher, they still can both make runs this tournament because they are incredible players. Now, you have Karage, who's supposed to lose to Ken, and Jogabu, who's supposed to lose to Proto Bonham. Those are two very tough opponents for both players, but they are the caliber player when they can make those upsets, they can make those runs. So there's a lot of people at this tournament who are playing similar characters and are seated similarly, and depending on how they do, they could definitely take that number 1 spot, for at least in Japan. I want to take a look at is going to be Tsubaki. Now, his first opponent that he's supposed to lose to is Passeriman in this part of the bracket, which ideally isn't amazing just because he's only ever played Passeriman once, and Passeriman did take that, but it was 4 months ago, and Tsubaki is a player that I have a lot of faith in. They popped off super hard at Japan 24, and after that, they didn't have any events that were super amazing, at least in comparison, but most recently, they come off this really nice second place at Toyota Grand Slam with a bunch of strong wins along the way, strong losers from them as well, which gives me a ton of faith. And if Tsubaki gets an upset over Passeriman, he does have a 2-1 record versus Mia. Now, Mia did win the last encounter, but signs of life are there. And this isn't like Mia when he was like a super bad player, no one knew about him. This was when Mia was still peak. He was still winning tournaments at this time, and Tsubaki was able to take a couple sets off of him. So I have a lot of faith in this guy just to perform at this tournament in general. I just think he's going to pop off one of these days, and this could definitely be the one. The next one I want to take a look at is going to be Neo, and it's not even because the bracket is particularly good for him. The players that he's supposed to lose to are Hiro and Osimo, who he has never played. I think Corrin does fine in those matchups as well. Versus the Shotos, it's going to be interesting because Corrin is a very good character at frame trapping. This is what I learned from watching Wave Dash. Leo was frame trapping so incredibly well in the grand finals, and a lot of the time he was able to beat Sonks because he would cover one option with a forward air, with a nair, whatever what it was, and then immediately he's able to do an up tilt, he's able to do a nair, he's able to do an up air, because Corrin's aerials are so quick and they do link into each other. So that's a really good thing when you're playing against Bowser, for example. He's really big, he has a slower air dodge, he has trouble getting off the ledge. Corrin can cover a bunch of stuff. Versus the Shotos, when you have focus, you can break that focus because you hit it, let's say, with a forward air, then you can immediately nash an air, you're going to get your second hit, and that's also your combo starter. So I think Neo definitely has the chance to upset both of those players. I just kind of have a lot more faith in Corrin in general after watching the performance at Wave Dash, and Neo's Corrin is way better than Leo's Corrin. Leo's just kind of better at the game, so I'm curious to see how Neo is going to perform here. I definitely think he can make top 8, though, and be one of the runs of the tournament. And the final player I want to take a look at before moving into the top 8 is going to be Toraguri, because their bracket is actually pretty good for them. They're supposed to lose to Osimo in the winner side of bracket, but the only time they've ever played Osimo was at KagDB 10, and it was Game 5, last stock, last hit. So that's definitely something that could go the other way around this time. Now, you would still probably favor Osimo because he does have the head-to-head in it, and he also has more experience in the matchup. By now, he's not going to be falling for as many tricks, but maybe you could say this about Toraguri as well. Banjo has a lot of ways to get around the Shoto stuff. They can camp them pretty well. You have a lot of ways to break focus with up air, with back air, with nair. It's just not really a super big problem for you. And you also, of course, have that X factor of wondering that Toraguri is so good at. But let's say he does lose to Osmo like he is projected to. In the loser side of bracket, he's actually supposed to go up against IM, and he does have a winning record versus IM now. They have only played once. You're only going to gain more information. I think the more times you play a Banjo player, it's going to be at that disadvantage to the Banjo player because you do get better and better. But I have never seen a Banjo like Toraguri. He is ridiculously good with this character. He can for sure make a couple upsets this tournament, and he's just one of the last people we kind of want to run into because I don't know how to deal with that Banjo. On to the top 8. The two players that I want to talk about first are both the 7th place seeds of Kameme and Hiro because I think they can both overperform their seeds. You have Kameme, who's supposed to lose to Mia in the winner's side of bracket and then qualify by beating Now, and you have Hiro, who's supposed to lose to Yoshidora in the winner's side of bracket and qualify by beating Ken. And as you can see for Hiro, that's actually not too bad of a draw. His record versus Yoshidora isn't amazing. It is 2-4 for Yoshidora, I guess 4-2 for Yoshidora, but that's definitely doable, right? He's shown signs of life. He's been able to beat him in the past. Would you favor him? No, probably not, but it's an upset that can happen. And then for Ken Hiro, they go back and forth. As you can see, it's technically Ken's turn to win this one, but I believe in Hiro to get that win. And it's going to be interesting to see, does he play Sonic? Does he play Sephiroth? Because I can see here, the Sephiroth works here, the Sonic works here, Sonic doesn't work here, so that's going to be an interesting match regardless. But let's say Hiro does get into the top 8. Once into the top 8, he goes into Proto Bonham. And for like anyone else in the world, not a great draw. For Hiro, that's an amazing draw. He has a 3-1 record. This is one of Proto Bonham's worst records just throughout the history of Smash Ultimate. So this is a really good sign for Hiro. And then he would move on to Gact if he was able to beat Proto Bonham. Now, they have a 1-1 record, so that's a little bit more tricky. But if he does manage to beat Gact, again, it's a coin flip, he would get to top 4 at this super major of a tournament with, again, Bowser. And this is something that Hiro has done in the past, so don't think it's unlikely. And then our other 7th place finisher of Kameme. As you can see, he has Mia here, and it's not an amazing record versus Mia. He did beat him the last time that they played, though this brawler probably shouldn't have won a game, and Mia probably should have won the set. The Sora was the one that was able to close it out, which I think is the most important. So Kameme can make that upset. In the loser side of bracket, he plays against Now, and unfortunately, he doesn't have any data versus Now, though I would favor Kameme there just because I think that Sora does pretty well in that matchup. Once in the top 8, his first matchup would be versus Osimo, and he did lose the last time that they played. He tried to pit the last 2 games, though, so I don't really know what that was about, but we'll just have to see how that actually unfolds. You would favor Kameme there, even though Osimo does have the last encounter. It is still 2-1 in Kameme's favor. And then finally, you have his matchup versus T. He has lost their last 2 encounters, and as you can see, most of these are pretty old wins, so you don't have a ton of information there. I guess you do have information. It's just kind of that T has been winning it. Their only super recent encounter is going to be this one at Umabor where T did pull out. So I'm curious to see, does Kameme just stick it with the sword? Does he go Mega Man? Does he go Brawler like we saw versus Mia at Battle BC? There's a lot of ways that it could go down, but you know what? Kameme has beaten T in the past. He clearly knows how to beat the player. Maybe just a little bit different with his new character matchup of Sora versus when he was using a lot more Mega Man, a lot more Wario early on. So even if he doesn't beat T, he would have overperformed his seed at that point. I think both Kameme and Hiro have a very good shot to get over their 7th place position. Our 5th place seeds are Osimo and Proto Bonham, and I kind of already talked about how both these guys could fall in the losers bracket, but that's if they get sent to the losers bracket, because I think both Proto Bonham and Osimo will probably make top 8 in the winner side. More confident about Osimo here because he has to go against Ken and Gact. As you can see, his record versus Gact is 3-1, which is incredibly strong, and his record versus Ken, while not as strong at a 1-2, he has won their last encounter. That's kind of one of my favorite things about Osimo as a player. If you look at these records, even some of the ones that are losing, he always gets a win. He always slowly starts to figure it out. His adaptation skills are so good. The only person he truly can't crack right now seems to be Mia, but that's also like a really, really tough matchup. But regardless, he has a 3-1 record versus Gact, so his hardest part of his bracket would probably be getting past Ken. If he does manage to get past Ken, that record versus Gact is looking really promising. Then you have Proto Bonham. Now, Proto Bonham unfortunately doesn't have a lot of data versus the new Rage, so we don't have sets with him versus Now. We don't have sets with him versus Jogabu. What we do have are sets with him versus T, and overall that is a 4-2 record for Proto Bonham. Now, T does win their last encounter, but it is going back and forth, as you can see, and some of these are a little bit older. I mean, most of these are a little bit older. As you can see, 7 months is the last time that they played, but that's just kind of because Proto Bonham hasn't really been competing a lot, so I'm very excited to see his great return here. He could bust her out super early. He could definitely also just win the entire thing, because if your ranking players just objectively off skill, you have to throw Proto Bonham's name in there for the top 5 because he is just so ridiculously talented. So we're gonna have to see how the break affects him, but I think both Osimo and Proto Bonham can make top 8 from the winner's side. Our 4th seed is Gact, and our 3rd seed is T. And these are two players that have had some very polarizing seasons. You look at Gact's season, you have some amazing performances. 3rd at Maesuma top 12, obviously is going to be your shining beacon here because this is just ridiculous. He beats T at that tournament as well. Has a 5th place at Subigeki, 9th place at KagaDB 9. Then he has a 33rd at Genesis, 25th at KagaDB 10. So some ups and some downs, even though the downs aren't honestly that bad. And then you look at T stuff, it's kind of the same. 2nd at Umaboro, really good. 5th at Maesuma top 12, really good. 7th 17th at Calgary, 13th at Crown. So both these guys, they've had tournaments where they've been hitting, and they've had tournaments where they aren't. And in terms of the matchups that they're supposed to lose in the winner's side of bracket, I already talked about when they could get upset, but let's say they do make it into the top 8. Mia is not a great match for Gek. He's 0-5 here. It's a really tough match for Ness, and Mia is very good at it, so that's not a great draw. And for T as well, his matchup is supposed to be against Yoshidora, and they are 2-2, so it's a lot better. It's definitely an upset T can make. He won the last encounter. Now, as you can see, the Pac-Man didn't work twice, and the Kazuya worked, so I do imagine that it would be the Kazuya pick that got T success, though. We will have to see. But that's definitely an upset that can happen. But let's just say that this loser semifinal match happens. If it were to happen, I would actually super favor Gak because the record is very heavily in his favor. As you can see, it is 5-2 for Gak. He does win it at Leota C, that being T, but before that, it's pretty dominant for Gak, so I would favor him here. He has the last encounter as well, and this is only 2 months ago. So if Gak is able to get into winter semifinals, there's a very real path where he gets another top 3 at these super mega major tournaments. But I could also see T getting into the top 3 of this tournament through the winners finals because he gets a nice set over Yoshidora. He'd have to beat Proto Bonham to get there as well. It's not going to be easy for any of these players to get top 3 at this tournament, but I think Gak and T definitely have possibilities. And finally, we have our top 2 of Yoshidora and Mia. And this is a very interesting top 2 because I think Yoshidora's path, it's a little bit tricky. He has to go through T. He has to go through Hiro. Those are players who have taken sets off him in the past. Mia's path is not that hard. I would say Mia's hardest opponent throughout the entire tournament up until winners finals is going to be his set versus Kameme, because before that he would go into either Passeriman or Tsubaki. Tsubaki has the potential to be hard, but that's only if the upset happens. Passeriman should be a pretty good one from. I don't even imagine Passeriman goes Fox. He'd probably go a secondary there. Maybe Rob, I think, was Passeriman's secondary. Rob or Diddy Kong, not super sure. But regardless, you would super favor Mia going against Passeriman's secondary because he can't really go Fox because Game & Watch Fox is just a really tough matchup. Then we would have Kameme, which is difficult, but I still think Mia wins that. Then Gak, we already showed that record. And then you get to Yoshidora. Now, this is very interesting. This is going to be a fun Grand Finals if it's Yoshidora and Mia, because as you can see, at Toyota Grand Slam, or rather Sumabato SP39, you have Yoshidora winning the Winners Finals and the Game 5 in Grand Finals. Before that, though, you have Mia winning 3 sets, then you have Yoshidora winning a set, and then you have Mia winning a set. So they're just kind of going back and forth. But at Sumabato, you did have Yoshidora winning the set twice, so maybe on paper you would favor him there. I would still pick Mia to be my favorite to win the entire tournament just because his bracket path is easier, and he still overall does have the winning record versus Yoshidora, but this is going to be a very high Grand Finals if it's these guys. There's also a handful of players that I could slot in there. I could see T making it. I could super see Proto Bonham making it if he's able to keep his winners run alive. Like, there's a ton of people that are candidates for it. Your main 2, though, are going to be the top 2 seeds, obviously, and I think Mia by far has the easiest run to the top 8. Not the easiest run, just the matchups will work out really well for him. He has good head-to-heads versus these people, and he's also just been incredibly dominant as of late. So I expect to see Mia in the Grand Finals. I also expect to see Yoshidora, but it's going to be a little bit more labored for him. And I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Now, we didn't talk about necessarily every single player at this tournament because there's just too many. So if there's someone that I left out, please let me know down below. Sport's been absolutely unreal. Thank you guys for everything. Be sure to sub, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.